Word on the grapevine says Stranger Things Season 5 is in production. So it looks like a small town D&D group is going to be taking on Vecna pretty soon, which is awesome. That got me wondering, has anybody actually tried playing Stranger Things as a D&D campaign? I mean, how would you even go about doing that? New characters get stuff like slingshot proficiency or something? Joking aside, I'm willing to bet some crazy nuts have actually tried to do just that at one point or another. D&D just isn't suited to that kind of game, though. It's about playing valiant heroes armed with swords and sorcery, not a bunch of ordinary people armed with a few guns, at best. Fortunately for those who do want to play that kind of game, I've got just the thing for you. Chronicles of Darkness, or Chrondark for short, is a tabletop role-playing game like D&D, but with the setting and rules catered to modern horror. So take our world, but make it darker. I said darker, not angsty. Anyways, people go through lives much like our own. The same jobs, the same hobbies, the same problems, big and small. They've also got the same superstitions and old wives' tales. All manner of monsters lurking about in the shadows. In our world, such tales and creatures are nothing more than exaggerations of subtle realities, if not outright falsehoods. But in this world, however, vampires truly do bite your neck to suck your blood. Werewolves do shift into howling wolves. Witches do brew powerful, wicked potions. All the while, the ordinary folk, the mortals, deny and remain ignorant of their world's supernatural underbelly. Why? Well, it's like Murray said.
They like the curtain. It provides them stability, comfort, definition.
But some people lose their loved ones to that curtain. The things behind it threaten the community under their charge, or they're simply born behind it whether they like it or not. Whatever the reasons, some individuals, brave and or stupid, peel back that curtain and delve into the supernatural. So yeah, Chrondark is perfect for playing games based on supernatural horror stories like Stranger Things, Five Nights at Freddy's, or just about every horror movie you can think of. On top of that, it's also part of a whole shared universe of several other games using the same basic rules. Vampire the Requiem, Werewolf the Forsaken, and Mage the Awakening are but a few. Each of these games can be played on their own, or mixed together however you like. So how do you play, you ask? Well, now it's time for the rules overview. Now, I'm not going to go over all the rules. That'd be pretty long and boring. What I will do is give you a nice overview and then tell you where you can buy the books yourself. For those who are already familiar with tabletop role-playing games, or TTRPGs for short, you'll want to skip to this part of the video. Here, I'm going to go over the general premise of TTRPGs for those who are new to this type of game. You usually have a group of about 4 to 6 players. All but one of them plays as their own protagonist in the story. They determine their personality and capabilities, then act out as them, speaking their dialogue, describing their actions, making their decisions, all that stuff. The last player is typically known as the Game Master, GM for short. Role players love their acronyms. Different games have different terms for this role. D&D uses Dungeon Master, DM, and Chrondark uses Storyteller, ST. But the neutral term is GM. This player is responsible for the overarching narrative and plays as all the other characters. The setting, the major conflict, the antagonists, you get the idea. Whenever the outcome of a character's action is in doubt, like one of the protagonists attacking their enemy, an antagonist trying to sneak up and ambush the protagonist, or something cool like that, is when dice are rolled. Okay, some games don't use dice. They might use cards or something. Most TTRPGs, including D&D and Chrondark, use dice though. It's very common. Anywho, dice are rolled to see if an action succeeds or fails and to what degree. When player characters accomplish certain goals, they're rewarded with some form of experience points, which strengthen their capabilities as they advance through the narrative. They get stronger, refine their skills, and learn more stuff so that they can take on bigger, badder challenges, concluding with an epic finale! So who wins? Well, everybody who's had fun with it. The only real way to lose in a TTRPG is to have a bad time of it. And if one player is, they tend to drag others into it too. So all players are incentivized to make sure everybody's having a good time. And that's what makes TTRPG so great. Everybody can win and create fantastic tales and memories that'll stick with you for the rest of your life. Now we're on to the specific rules for Krondark. Mind you, I'm going to be using some D&D specific lingo here and there for those familiar with that game, so I can break them in a bit easier. But I'll still fully explain the rules for the rest who are completely new. So if you hear a term you're unfamiliar with, don't worry about it, it's just me talking to the D&D players. Most of a character's capabilities are represented with attributes and skills. Attributes are basic capabilities that everybody has to some degree, such as strength, dexterity, and intelligence. Skills are learned and trained abilities like investigation, firearms, and subterfuge. They're all measured with dots. The more dots you have in one, the better you are at it. A character with only 1 dot in strength is a real weenie, but someone with 5 is one of the strongest people on Earth. Everybody has at least 1 dot in each attribute, since even the weenie has at least a little bit of strength, but the human average is 2 in each. Skills are a bit different, since you need to actively learn them. They start with no dots at first to represent a lack of training in that field. 0 dots in investigation means even a junior snoop can figure out stuff that would stump you, where 5 dots means you're Sherlock Holmes. So what do these dots do? When you take an action, the storyteller, SD, will call for what's known as a dice pool. This is usually going to be an attribute plus another attribute, or an attribute plus a skill. You then add up your dots in these, and that's how many d10s, or 10-sided dice, you roll. Every die that rolls an 8 or higher gives you 1 success. If you roll a 10, represented on most dice as a 0, it not only counts as a success, but you also get to re-roll it for a chance at further success. Even another re-roll if it lands on 10 again. Naturally, this is called the 10 again rule. For most actions, you only need 1 success to actually achieve it, but the more successes you get, the better the results. 1 success is the bare minimum. 3 means you did a pretty good job. 5 or more means you've achieved an exceptional success, basically a crit. You've done the thing with flying colors. You aced it. You got an A+. This is where you usually get a positive condition like inspired or steadfast. More on those later. If you don't score any successes, you're plumb out of luck. You fail at doing the thing. Example time! Let's say your character is snooping around an abandoned building and opens the door to a dark room. As you enter, the SD tells you to make a perception check. This is one of the most common rolls you'll be doing. It's just to see how well your character observes their surroundings. The dice pool is wits plus composure, 2 attributes since it's very simple to take a look around. Your character has 3 dots in wits and 2 dots in composure, so you'd roll 5 dice. Let's see how you do. 2 successes! So you get the basic gist of the room and maybe a bit of detail here and there. But wait, isn't the room dark? How are you able to see what's in it? Well, it's not pitch black, but it is dark and there's no electricity for you to turn on any lights. So let's talk about modifiers. Certain situations and items can either help or hinder a character's efforts. A dark room would penalize your perception check because of the poor light. Let's say you take a -2 penalty to the roll. This means that you take 2 dice away from the dice pool. In the example, you're only rolling 3 dice this time. So here we go. No successes. This doesn't mean you see nothing, but rather you don't see anything of significance. To your character, it's just a dark room with nothing of note. Fortunately, there are modifiers that add dice to your roll. Let's say your character is armed with some glow sticks and a flashlight. This gives you +3 dice, which not only negates the penalty, but also adds an extra die to your original pool. Now your dice pool is 6 dice. Roll them again.
That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
That's an exceptional success! Not only do you catch all the significant details, you also stumble onto a major clue that'll help you defeat the monster or some other cool benefit like that, along with the inspired condition to use later on. Again, we'll get to that. Sometimes you aren't so lucky though. If your dice pool is penalized to 0 or less dice, then you roll a chance die. The chance die is rolled when your character has little to no hope of accomplishing the action, and can even mess it up real bad. You only roll the 1 die, only score a success on a 10, and you get no 10 again. If you roll a 1, then you make a dramatic failure, a crit fail. You botched it. You really messed things up.
You done goofed.
You don't just fail, but you also make your situation worse. Going back to the dark room, let's say it's pitch black this time, and the door closes behind you, cutting you off from any light. To add insult to injury, you don't have your flashlight and glow sticks either. You take a -5 penalty, so you roll a chance die. Oh dear. So, not only can you not really discern anything around you, but you're also panicking! You take the shaking condition. Not a good time. Okay, now that we've got the main cog of the rules down, it's time to go into how Krondark handles violence. I know you D&D players were expecting the word combat, but the word violence has connotations that convey the Krondark feel and atmosphere much better. Combat sounds cool and fun, whereas violence sounds brutal and scary. And that's exactly how it should feel. It's a horror game after all. Just as in D&D, everybody first rolls for initiative. This is used to determine the order in which characters can act. Unlike action rolls, everybody rolls a single die each, and rather than counting successes, you take the actual number you rolled and add that to your character's initiative modifier, which is a character trait, for the final result. The one with the highest initiative acts first, and the rest of the order descends down from the second highest onwards. If there's a tie between characters, you go for the one with the highest initiative modifier first. And if there's a tie there, then I guess it's the ST's decision based on the circumstances. This is kind of rare though, so don't worry about it. Once the order's all set, characters make their actions like attacks, diving for cover, or running away. You roll for these actions as you would for any others. When making attacks, you subtract your target's defense trait from your roll as a penalty, as it represents a character's ability to avoid harm. The exception to this is when you're using firearms. People can't exactly dodge bullets. You'll need cover and concealment for that, but those specific rules are out of the scope of this video. However you make your attack, any successes you score count as damage towards your target. Speaking of which, let's talk about health and damage. Health is a trait that's calculated by adding your character's size and stamina. The average adult human is size 5, and since average stamina is 2, this means that most adults will have 7 dots of health. Underneath your health dots are your health boxes. These are used for marking damage you take. There are 3 levels of damage: bashing, lethal, and aggravated. As you've probably guessed, each level is more severe than the last. You mark the damage you take from left to right. When your last health box is filled with damage, bad things happen. And the more severe the level, the worse it gets. So let's go over the levels. Bashing damage is what you'd get in fisticuffs scuffles. Bruising, minor bleeding, black eyes, that sort of thing. It's marked on the boxes as a single slash. When your last box is filled with bashing, often referred to as full bashing, you struggle to stay conscious. You roll only your stamina as a dice pool. Fail, and you're out cold. Succeed, and you're awake. But you still have to make the roll every time it comes back to your turn in the initiative order. Lethal damage is when weapons get involved. Broken bones, bullet wounds, major bleeding, the kind of stuff that's pretty, well, lethal. They're marked with crosses. At full lethal, you're knocking on death's door. If not unconscious, you're at the very least incapacitated. You're also bleeding out or otherwise dying. Every minute that passes turns your leftmost lethal damage to aggravated, until you receive immediate and effective medical attention. Aggravated damage happens when you start losing pieces. Chopped off limbs, red fountains, entire chunks blown out. The kind of stuff that, even if you do survive it, will come with deep, permanent scars. You mark each point with an asterisk, and once you've arrived at full aggravated, then... This means that violence is very dangerous and scary, especially when weapons are involved. Armed attacks not only do lethal damage in rolled successes, they also have a damage modifier that, usually, adds to that. Hitting someone with a crowbar adds 2 extra damage. It's a big steel rod after all. Even for characters suited to combat, all it really takes is 2, maybe 3 good hits if you're lucky, before you're at full lethal. And once you're at full lethal, you've only got a few minutes before you're making a new character. So how do you recover from damage? Well, there's no health potions for you to drink, unfortunately. Instead, you need time. Every point of bashing only takes 15 minutes to recover. Every lethal point will take you 2 days, though, and a whole week for every aggravated point. Solid healthcare halves these times, along with your wallet contents in the land of the guns. With health covered, now let's move on to the other major trait you'll be working with. Willpower. This is another trait like health that's calculated by adding your resolve and composure. Willpower dots determine the maximum amount of willpower points you can have at once. Think of it like a stamina bar or something like that. You can spend a willpower point to give yourself a +3 bonus to any action, with some exceptions, such as trying to stay conscious from full bashing damage. There are 3 main ways to recover willpower points. You regain 1 for every restful night's sleep. Having a bad night ain't gonna cut it. You act on your virtue, or you act on your vice. Virtue and vice are your character's main personality traits. Virtue is your best point, like courageous, generous, or loyal. Vice is your worst point, like arrogant, competitive, or greedy. Whenever you act on your vice in a way that costs you and or others, you regain a single willpower point. An arrogant prick will trump themselves up, only to be met with failure and embarrassment. A competitive jerk will pursue an advantage that adversely affects a friend. A greedy bastard will instantly swipe that priceless artifact, only to trigger a deadly trap. On the other hand, acting on your virtue to your great detriment refreshes all your spent willpower points. A courageous soldier foregoes an opportunity to flee in order to save their comrades from danger. A generous soul gives what little they have to the common good. A loyal friend will never betray those close to them, no matter how advantageous it would be to do so. Essentially, they're there to encourage you to both spend your willpower points and roleplay your character's personality. Alright, so far we've covered each character's general capabilities. Now it's time to go into more specific stuff, which are represented with merits. These cover a wide variety of assets and capabilities. Anything from what your character has at their disposal, like money and equipment, their status and hierarchies, to more specific examples that aren't covered in attributes and skills, are all covered in merits. In D&D terms, think of them like covering feats, racial traits, and inventory all in one. Merits have dot ratings all over the place. Some of them go from 1 to 5, like status and resources, as they represent your standing and influence in an organization or how much spare wealth you have to throw around, respectively. Others have static ratings, such as danger sense being at 2 dots only. Beyond that is everything in between, such as meditative mind going from 1 to 2 to finally 4 dots and gaining greater effects at each higher dot rating. The more dots in a merit, the more useful or broadly applicable it is. A 1-dot merit is pretty weak or specific. Holistic awareness, for instance, means your character has a decent knowledge of medicinal herbs and folk healing techniques that they can use to give medical aid to minor ailments and injuries without a first aid kit, so long as they have access to diverse flora or appropriate tools, such as being in the wilderness or near a greenhouse. Very handy in such a situation, but not so for anything else. Hence, it's only at 1 dot. Trained Observer also starts at 1 dot, but has a better effect at 3. The 1 dot effect gives you 9 again on all your perception checks. 9 again is exactly what it sounds like. You re-roll every die that comes up a 9 or 10. At 3 dots, you get the 8 again bonus, which means, yes, you re-roll every time you get a success. Since perception checks are so common, you can see why it costs 3 dots. Alright, your character is armed with the attributes, skills, and merits to delve into the depths of the darkness. But how will they cope with the horrors that await them? That's where this comes in. Integrity. Krondark's a horror game, and horror's chock full of danger, misfortune, and trauma. Integrity represents how well a character copes with it all. Their mental health, if you will. Player characters start with 7 dots, though NPCs the ST control may start with more or less. Traumatic experiences and terrible actions, like seeing a pile of corpses, witnessing a supernatural occurrence, or killing someone, even in self-defense, will result in a breaking point. When this happens, you roll Resolve plus Composure, which is usually penalized based on the severity of the trauma. If you fail the action, you lose a dot and take a condition like Guilty, Shaken, or Spooked. Even if you succeed, you still take the condition, but you don't lose the integrity dot. So what happens if you lose all your dots of integrity? Well, you lose yourself. You're racked with madness, broken beyond repair. You may even become a monster underneath your human skin, psychologically speaking. It essentially means character death, just not literally. At this point, you'll probably just play out your character's ending before writing up a new one. But what about all these conditions I've been referencing over the course of this video? Good time as any to go into them now. Conditions and tilts. Conditions are particular circumstances that temporarily affect your character. Most of these are negative, but there's some positive ones. Some inflict a penalty to certain rolls, like Guilty giving you a -2 on any resolve or composure rolls that resist empathy, intimidation, or subterfuge rolls against you, as remorse over what you've done eats away at your confidence. Others can aid your dice rolls besides bonuses, like how Steadfast allows you to succeed on a roll despite failing on it otherwise. Every condition has some way to resolve it, and when you do, you earn a beat. More on that later, but suffice to say, you want beats. Restitution for your crimes will resolve the Guilty condition. Using Steadfast to turn a failure into a success uses it up. Not all conditions are temporary, though. Some are persistent, like being blind or crippled. Because you normally can't resolve these kind of things, instead you get a beat whenever it impacts you negatively. Losing your cane and or guide dog when you're blind is going to make traversing the world more difficult. Same for losing your wheelchair for crippled. Tilts, on the other hand, are usually reserved for violence or other fast-paced situations and are only temporary or pertaining to certain environments. If someone throws dirt in your face, you're blinded, but not permanently. There could be heavy rain outside, but it's not a problem when you're inside. These don't give any beats when they resolve. But what are beats? Here's where we talk about experiences and aspirations. You spend experiences to upgrade your character, like getting more dots and attributes, skills, merits, etc. But how do you get experiences? You acquire beats! They're short for story beats. 5 beats gets you an experience. This is why you want to get beats. Besides resolving conditions, how do you get these beats? The main way is by fulfilling your aspirations. These can be all sorts of story-related things, like goals that your character wants to accomplish, the trials you want them to face, or other interesting events you want for your character's story. Joyce finding her son Will, Elle being confronted by Papa, Eddie witnessing Chrissy's supernatural murder. They're all fine examples of aspirations. One thing to note about aspirations is that they must have some kind of endpoint. They can't be open-ended or indefinite. This is because once they've been fulfilled, you're awarded a beat. That said, particularly long-term aspirations can award a beat every time you make substantial headway through them, but even these need to have a finish line. There are several other ways of getting beats, like going through a breaking point, having all your health boxes filled with damage, even bashing, opting to turn a normal failure into a dramatic one, or even as a reward for great role-playing moments. You also get one at the end of every gaming session, too. Okay, so you got your beats, which have turned into experiences, and you want to buy some dots. How many do you need? Attributes cost 4 experiences per dot, though I have a house rule that reduces it to 3. Skills and integrity need 2 per dot, and merits only need 1 per dot. And that's all the rules I'm going to go over for this video. It can seem overwhelming at first, but it's actually pretty easy to pick up once you start playing. And on that note, buying books and playing Chronicles. I've glossed over a lot of the rules, so if you want a complete set, you're going to need the books. You can buy them online on sites like DriveThruRPG, which you can log into with a Facebook account. The digital copies are quite affordable, and there's options for buying hard copies as well if you want them. Be sure to look for Chronicles of Darkness, not World of Darkness. They have the same cover, but World is the first edition of the game. Chronicles is what you want. Once you have all the books, you'll need people to play with. If you can't get any local buddies in on the fun, you can always try the internet. Roll20 is a great website for hosting and playing all kinds of TTRPGs, not just Krondark. There's plenty of Krondark fans on the Onyx Path forums that are hungry for games, as well as YouTube channels like Occultist Anonymous, The Botch Pit, and Awkward GM Corbin. They even have their own Discord channels where you can talk to the YouTubers themselves quite regularly. Speaking of Discord, there's also a dice rolling bot called Dicecord that you can use on any server. Links to all these are in the description, of course. It may not be as popular as D&D or Vampire the Masquerade, but you can find plenty of peeps to play Krondark when you know where to look. Once you've got them roped in, what is your chronicle going to be about? The main book's got you covered there. There are several scenarios you can host or play in if you don't have any ideas on you already. They all center on the God Machine. It's an incredibly advanced and powerful AI that rules over humanity in mysterious ways. It does so through the work of its angels. Less like that, and more like this. Horror game. Anyways, these angels live in infrastructure that exists in between the fabric of reality. Think the backrooms and you get the general idea. There, they subtly manipulate the masses towards all sorts of alien, nefarious goals. Why? Nobody knows, or at least, not for sure. Whatever the God Machine wants, it doesn't end well for the people involved. That said, you don't have to use the God Machine at all if you don't want. Hell, you can even have a chronicle based around the Stranger Things universe. And for that, I've got future videos. Because of how well Krondark suits playing a Stranger Things game, I'm going to make several videos on just that. The very next video I'm going to make will center on how to create one of the main characters in the system. I've linked a Google form in the description so you can vote on which of the main characters you want me to build. Anyone except for 11, since I'll be using Deviant the Renegades for building her specifically. I'll also be going over subsystems like investigations, chases, and social maneuvering by applying them to different scenes in the show. Of course, we can't forget about the monsters. I'll go over how to build the Demogorgon, the Mind Flayer, and even Vecna. Until then, farewell. And as always, even though this is the first time I'm saying this in a video, forgive yourself.
I don't want to alarm you, but the God Machine has infiltrated all across the internet. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all of it, with its algorithm angels. Massive conspiracy, man. It's controlling everything, man. Now, the only way to keep this message out there and on the down low is to like, share, and subscribe to the channel in order to placate these algorithm angels. You can also tip me on Ko-Fi. Give me those kofifis. Kofifis are essential. And then also join the Door Touchers Discord channel to keep the resistance alive. Good luck.